The first time Tyler called me a freeloader, it wasn't to my face. It was a mutter, tossed like a stone behind his teeth, camouflaged as a grunt while he opened a beer. But I heard it. I was in the kitchen drying dishes, still wearing the apron I put on every night after cooking for them. He was lounging on the couch, one foot over the armrest like it was his throne. Jess, my daughter, laughed at something on TV, a reality show with loud women and louder music. He muttered it again, this time more clearly, aimed not at me but at the space I occupied. Freeloader. I flinched, though I tried not to. My hand froze mid-wipe, dish towel dangling over a chipped plate. I kept my back to them. Not because I was ashamed, not yet, but because I didn't trust what would show on my face. I glanced over my shoulder. Jess didn't react. Her eyes stayed glued to the screen. Maybe she didn't hear. Maybe she chose not to. That was her new talent, looking away. Disappearing into the fabric of a man who had slowly unstitched her from me. I wasn't supposed to be there long. That's what I told them and myself when I first moved in after Harold died. 42 years of marriage ended by one silent, traitorous stroke. I sold our home in Yakima, the one we built board by board, season by season. The garden he loved. The birdhouse I painted. The porch where he drank his morning coffee, always in silence, but always with love. I packed it all away. 2 suitcases. 1 small box of photographs and papers. I kept only what I couldn't bear to leave and nothing more. Jess said it made sense for me to come stay. She called it temporary, like a band-aid over a wound too deep to name. You'll be with family, Mom, she said. And Tacoma's not so far. At first, I believed her. The room they gave me was small, with pale green walls and one narrow window that stared into the neighbor's brick siding. I kept the blinds drawn. I didn't want to see other people's homes. Other people's lives. My furniture had been sold. My car, my little blue Corolla, I sold myself, though later Tyler would twist the story. I hadn't driven much since Harold passed. My hands trembled too much on the wheel. It scared me. So I stayed in. I cooked. Cleaned. I folded their laundry and watered their plants. I made myself useful. That's what women like me do. We become ghosts with soft hands and quiet footsteps, trying to be useful so we won't be resented for simply existing. But Tyler never looked at me like I belonged. Not even once. He'd sigh when I entered a room. Not always loudly. Sometimes just a twitch of the lip, a shifting of his weight, a glance at Jess. A code I wasn't meant to crack, but one I understood perfectly. At dinner, he'd change the channel mid-story. I'd be recounting a memory, something about Harold, something gentle, and Tyler would yawn, grab the remote, and turn on sports highlights. Jess would murmur, "He's just tired, Mom," but she never asked him to stop. One night, he asked, "Did she use the hot water again? That tank doesn't refill itself, you know." He was staring at the ceiling, not at me. I had taken a 5-minute shower. Just enough to scrub grief off my skin. I said nothing. Jess busied herself with the dishes. But it was the grocery store that broke me. That day, I'd finally decided to shop for myself. I had a little money left from the house sale. Just enough for simple things. Oatmeal. Milk. Bananas. A tin of soup. I didn't want to rely on them. I was trying, in my small, silent way, to earn my keep. But Tyler insisted on coming. Said they needed real food. I knew what that meant. Processed meat, soda, chips, things I would never buy. We reached the checkout line, and I gently unloaded my small items. He tossed his things on after mine with a clang. Then, casually, too loudly, he turned to the cashier and said, "She's too old to drive. We sold her car for her." The cashier paused, her hand hovering over the milk. A man behind us snorted. A woman turned and glanced at me with that half-smile people wear when watching a stranger's dignity collapse. I didn't speak. I didn't correct him. I just paid for my groceries and stood there while he added beer and a frozen pizza. I felt something collapse inside me, not loud like a breaking bone, but quiet like a final breath. That night, I made a pot roast. Jess's favorite. I used rosemary from the windowsill garden she forgot to water. I set the table carefully, folded napkins like I used to on Sundays. When we sat down, Tyler took one bite, chewed without thanks, and pushed the plate away. "We're not a charity, Nora," he said, as if discussing the weather. Just didn't meet my eyes. He leaned back, staring straight at me now, like this was a performance. How long is this gonna go on? I opened my mouth and nothing came. Not defense. Not outrage. Not even breath. Jess cleared her throat. "Maybe Mom should find something more stable." She said it with the tone of someone suggesting a different route to avoid traffic. Casual. Detached. A gentle betrayal sharpened by passivity. I nodded. Not because I agreed, but because I couldn't bear the silence that followed. That night, I walked into my room and closed the door. The air was heavy. My bags were still half-packed. I never fully unpacked. Something in me, some old, buried instinct, knew this was never home. I sat on the bed, picked up one photograph, Harold on our porch, squinting at the sun, mug in hand. I put it back in the box. At 3:12 a.m., I rose without noise. I dressed, buttoned my coat. The hall was dark. Their bedroom door was closed. I walked to the front door, turned the knob slowly. The floor creaked. I hesitated. Part of me hoped someone would hear. That Jess would step out, bleary-eyed, and say, "Don't go." But the silence was complete. I stepped outside. The air cut through my coat. A wind brushed past me, indifferent. I walked to the corner without looking back. No one followed. The first motel I found had peeling wallpaper and flickering lights. The man at the front desk barely looked up. $68. I handed over cash. He gave me a key. Inside, the bed sagged. The heater rattled. I sat on the edge and stared at my hands. They looked older in this light. I turned on the TV, not to watch, but to fill the silence. I thought of Jess. Of the time I held her fevered head to my chest during her worst flu. Of the ballet recitals, the missed birthdays Harold worked late to cover. Of the time she wrecked her first car and sobbed into my arms like the world had ended. I had given her everything I had. And when I had nothing left, I gave her my presence. Apparently, that was the final offense. I texted her the next morning. "I understand. I love you." No reply. I waited 3 hours before powering the phone off. That night, I didn't cry. The grief had already been spent in whispers and empty rooms. What I felt now wasn't grief. It was shame. And shame, I would learn, weighs more than loss. It's heavier than widowhood. More suffocating than silence. I stared at the cracked ceiling of a room I didn't belong to, in a life I no longer recognized, and whispered aloud, not to Jess, not to Harold, but to myself. You are not a freeloader. You are not a burden. You are not erased. But in that moment, I didn't believe it. Not yet. The motel walls were the color of wet cardboard. The television buzzed faintly even when it was off. My shoes rested side by side beneath the cracked window like tired sentinels. I didn't unpack. I hadn't unpacked in months. Grief does that. It teaches you to live lightly, not because you want to, but because no place feels like home anymore. Days blurred. I tried. I really did. I applied to jobs, office assistant, cashier, school lunch monitor. Jobs that didn't ask much, jobs I'd done decades ago when Harold and I were first building our life. But I was always too late, too old, too quiet. Too experienced, not the right fit, they said with practiced sympathy. They didn't mean experience. They meant my hands. My age. My silence. I began waking up without setting alarms. I'd walk to the nearby diner, nurse one coffee for 2 hours, and pretend to read the same dog-eared magazine. My room smelled of mildew and vending machine snacks. The wallpaper peeled in the corners. I tried to pray, but all I could hear was the echo of Tyler's voice. "We're not a charity, Nora." Then, one night, maybe a Tuesday, maybe not, I opened the last box I had carried from Yakima. The only one that still held weight. Inside, wrapped in a towel, was my mother's old leather diary. The leather had softened over the years, worn thin around the edges. Her initials, M.L., for Mabel Lee, were barely legible on the front. I hadn't touched it in decades. I opened it. The scent of old ink hit me first, sharp and immediate. The pages were yellowed, But her handwriting, looping, steady, elegant, was untouched by time. She wrote like someone confessing secrets she hoped would never be read. The entries weren't dated. They were letters, really. Unsent, private. She wrote about a man. About a name I never should have learned, but couldn't forget. There were lines crossed out, rewritten, hastily edited. She wrote of guilt, of love, of money she tried not to take. The initials W, P, H appeared again and again. At first, I thought it might be a friend, someone from her youth. But then came the entry that stopped me. If anything happens to me, he promised Nora would be taken care of. He swore it. W, P, H said Mr. Kaplan would handle it all quietly. My fingers trembled. I reread that sentence 5 times, as if repetition could force it into sense. I sat back stunned. Mr. Kaplan. W, P, H, Kaplan. The name stuck. I opened the motel's rickety desk drawer and took out the old motel notepad. I wrote it down. W, P, H, Mr. Kaplan. Something for Nora. The next morning, I walked to the public library. The computers were ancient, but they still turned on. I typed in Kaplan lawyer Tacoma. Too many results. I added estate, then W, P, H, nothing. Then I remembered her words. He'll handle it quietly. I added Seattle instead of Tacoma. There. A listing for Aaron Kaplan, estate law, retired. There was no email. Just a mailing address. No website. The kind of man who didn't want to be found unless you already knew where to look. I stared at the screen for a long time. I didn't trust my voice to carry the story. So I wrote a letter. Mr. Kaplan. I believe you once handled matters for W, P, H, a man my mother Mabel referenced in a private journal. I'm her daughter, Nora. I know this may sound unusual, but she wrote that if anything ever happened, you would have information for me. I am not asking for anything, only to understand. If this is a mistake, please forgive me. Nora Lee Harrington. I mailed it with a trembling hand. Then I returned to the motel and waited. Days passed. The ceiling stain grew darker. The vending machine swallowed my change. Jess didn't reply to my messages. I didn't expect her to. 2 weeks later, the phone at the front desk rang. The clerk, a teenage boy with a pierced lip and blue hair, knocked on my door. Nora? Some old guy called. Said his name's Kaplan. Asked if you could meet him. Left an address. I dressed carefully. Slacks. Sweater. The last pair of shoes I owned that didn't squeak. I rode the bus with the note clutched tight in my hand. Kaplan's office was in a quiet building near the waterfront. No sign. Just brass numbers on a wooden door. 302. I knocked. A voice, warm and gravelly, said, "Come in." He stood when I entered. Late 70s. Trim suit. Wispy white hair combed precisely. His eyes were sharp despite age. He gestured to the chair across from his desk. "Mrs. Harrington," he said. I didn't think I'd ever hear that name again. I sat slowly. "I believe I have something for you." He reached into a locked drawer and pulled out a folder. Yellowed, thick. Bound with a string. He set it before me like a final act in a play that had been rehearsing for decades. I undid the string. Inside, a letter, handwritten in careful, blocky print. To Nora. "You don't know me, but I know who you are. I met your mother at a time when neither of us were allowed to be honest. She refused to take my name. She refused my help. But I couldn't leave her unprotected. This is for you. Not because of guilt, but because of blood. You are mine. You always were. William P. Hart." My throat closed. Kaplan waited, saying nothing. I turned the page. Documents. Property titles. Account statements. Trust paperwork. Numbers I couldn't process all at once. The name Hart Marine appeared again and again. The boat company, the Hart estate. I'd seen it on buildings. Trucks. I never imagined I had a connection to it. I closed the folder slowly. My hands were shaking. "How much is this worth?" I asked quietly. Kaplan exhaled. "Roughly $650,000. It's been accruing interest since 1983. My mouth went dry. "I don't understand." "Why me? Why now?" Kaplan leaned back in his chair. Because some promises are made in silence. And some men, even the ones who fail at love, still try to do the right thing. He instructed me to wait until you asked. Until you found the trail. And if I never had? Then it would have stayed here. Quiet. Just like your mother wanted. We sat in silence. Outside the window, seagulls danced over the water. Kaplan poured tea without asking. The scent of jasmine filled the room. You look like her, he said. Your mother. I nodded. She wanted you safe. Independent. She knew what being invisible did to a woman. I thought of Jess. Of the grocery store. Of Tyler's smirk. I thought of the word freeloader and how easily it had stained me. I took a sip of tea. My hands had stopped shaking. For the first time in months, I didn't feel erased. I felt chosen. The first thing I bought with the money wasn't a car. Wasn't clothes or jewelry or some foolish symbol of revenge. It was a pen. A fountain pen. Blue lacquer. Silver trim. It sat in my palm like a promise. I used it to sign my name, Nora Lee Harrington, on a lease for a one-bedroom apartment in Seattle, 3rd floor, facing a quiet courtyard where sunlight filtered through elm trees. It wasn't grand. It wasn't cheap either. But it was mine. No Tyler breathing down my neck. No Jess avoiding my eyes. No one checking the thermostat or tracking the hot water usage. Just silence. And space. The day I moved in, I didn't call anyone. I unpacked slowly, folded my sweaters, hung the photo of Harold on the hallway wall. I made tea. I opened a window. Then I sat at my new table, opened my laptop, and began learning everything I'd never been allowed to know. Contracts, escrow, tax shelters, LLC structures, real estate trusts. I stayed up late every night watching YouTube tutorials, reading legal blogs, bookmarking state code sites. It wasn't about the money, not really. It was about language. About reclaiming the vocabulary that had been used against me my whole life. They said I was too old. So I learned faster. They said I was a freeloader. So I found leverage. 2 months into my studies, I came across a government auction listing, distressed properties. One caught my eye. Everett. It was an old apartment complex, 12 units, built in the 70s, overdue on taxes, riddled with code violations. The photos showed peeling paint, moss on the roof, rusted stair rails. I recognized the building immediately. It was the one Jess and Tyler lived in. I stared at the screen for 10 full minutes, my tea growing cold beside me. My stomach turned. I didn't feel joy. Not at first. I felt the weight of it. The irony. The poetry of this moment the universe had laid at my feet like an omen. I called Kaplan. It's legal. I asked. Perfectly, he said. Tax defaulted property goes to public auction. Anyone can bid. What if they find out it's me? Then they find out. But there are ways to protect your identity. We set it up. NL Holdings, LLC. Formed in Washington State. Managed anonymously through a registered agent. The name stood for Nora Lee, but no one had to know that. Kaplan handled the paperwork. I wired the funds. I placed the bid. It wasn't a dramatic battle. No rival bidders. No last-minute wars. Just a quiet click and a confirmation email. I was the owner. The deed arrived in the mail 2 weeks later. My name hidden behind layers of paperwork, but I held the key. I held the power to control every square inch of the building Jess and Tyler called home. I stared at the envelope, then whispered aloud to Harold, to the ghosts, to the version of myself I used to be. Let's see how he likes paying rent to the woman he called useless. The next morning, I bought myself a car. Not flashy. Not fast. A used sedan, white, with beige seats and low mileage. The kind of car a woman drives when she's not trying to prove anything to anyone. I drove it off the lot with the windows down and the radio off. I didn't need music. I had my own rhythm now. That afternoon, I took the long route. I passed by the old grocery store, the one where Tyler humiliated me. Then I kept going north, toward Everett. As I turned onto their street, I saw them. Jess and Tyler. Standing in the parking lot, smoking like teenagers. He wore those same sagging sweatpants. She wore the same tired look on her face. They didn't see me at first. Then I slowed. Then I parked. Then I stepped out. Their eyes locked on the car. Jess blinked. Tyler's cigarette froze halfway to his mouth. I smiled. Waved once. Got back in the car. Drove off. I didn't look back. 2 weeks later, I hired a property manager. Young. Smart. Efficient. Her name was Zara. She had a clipboard and a no-nonsense ponytail. She didn't know the full story, but I gave her the instructions. Standard lease audits. Safety inspections. Rent evaluations. And upgrades where necessary. She nodded. You want to raise rents? Only where the market allows. And only after everything is brought up to code. Anything else? Yes. I want full records. Photos. Noise complaints. Maintenance logs. Understood. I told her nothing about Jess. Nothing about Tyler. That wasn't necessary. The tenants received their letters the next day. New ownership. NL Holdings. Renovation schedules. Lease reevaluations. Within hours, Tyler sent an email to the manager. This is robbery. We've lived here for years. Who owns this building? Zara forwarded it to me. I replied with a PDF. Citations. Local rent averages. Inspection reports. Lease violations. Nothing personal. All legal. All documented. Tyler responded with silence. That week, I saw Jess again. At a grocery store in Everett. She stood near the clearance aisle, holding a box of mac and cheese, staring at her phone. She read a message, then slowly placed the box back on the shelf. Her eyes were hollow. Her coat hung loose. I stood 3 aisles away and watched her. Not with malice. Not with joy. With grief. She looked up. Our eyes met. She opened her mouth. Closed it. I turned and walked away. That night she called. Voicemail. Mom, can we talk? Her voice was soft. Raw. Please. I didn't call back. The next day, Zara emailed again. Photos from the inspections. Mildew. Broken tiles. Rotting cabinets. Piles of unopened mail. Loud music complaints from neighbors. One tenant reported shouting, "This is all your fault," followed by the sound of breaking glass. Then an envelope appeared under Zara's office door. Unmarked. No stamp. No return address. Inside, a note, scrawled in heavy, angry pen. I know what you're doing. I'll find you. Zara scanned it, sent it to me. Tyler's handwriting. I'd seen it on birthday cards. On notes taped to the fridge. Sloppy. Thick. Pressed too hard. I didn't cry. I called Kaplan. We documented everything. Filed a police report. Strengthened security. Tyler's tantrums were like toddler storms, loud, wild, brief. But I wasn't afraid. Not anymore. A week later, Jess showed up. It was raining. She knocked on the door of my Seattle apartment, soaked through, clutching a plastic grocery bag like a life raft. I let her in. She stood there dripping on my rug, shivering, looking everywhere but at me. I'm sorry, she whispered. I said nothing. She looked around. This is nice. Still, I said nothing. She placed the bag on the table. Inside, tea. Crackers. A jar of honey. I didn't know where else to go, she said. I poured her tea. She's Saturday, he's paranoid, she said. He checks my phone. Follows me to work. He thinks someone's out to get us. I stared into my cup. Then I said, quietly, you didn't let him do this to me, Jess. You stood with him. She didn't deny it. Her lip trembled. She nodded. I know. Silence fell. But not like before. This silence stung. She reached for my hand, but stopped. I didn't reach back. Some bridges collapse all at once. Others rot over time. She left before dark. I didn't ask where she went. I just sat there, alone again, but not empty. Not erased. Becoming someone new isn't loud. It's a long, quiet shedding. One silence at a time. There's a difference between revenge and consequence. Revenge is theatrical. It's fire and spectacle, the kind of thing you write down to feel better. But consequence, that's quiet. That's structural. It's a recalibration of truth. It doesn't scream. It doesn't warn. It just arrives, wearing a neutral expression, holding a clipboard. That's what I gave Jess and Tyler. Not revenge. Consequence. Zara continued managing the Everett property with clinical precision. Her weekly reports were blunt and efficient: lease violations, overdue maintenance requests, water usage spikes, unpaid rent notices. Her emails came with attachments, annotated spreadsheets, timestamped photographs, call logs. October 2nd. Unit 5 noise complaint. Verbal altercation at 11:47 p.m. Neighbor reports loud shouting, slamming doors, woman crying. No police call made. October 6th. Unit 5 behind on rent. No payment received for September. Second notice delivered. No response. October 10th. Unit 5 reported mold in bathroom. Photos attached. Violation of tenant maintenance clause confirmed. Tenant non-compliant. Unit 5. That was them. Jess and Tyler. Their home was crumbling, not just the pipes or tiles, but the fiction they built inside it. The illusion that they were self-sufficient. The performance of stability they used to excuse the way they treated me. I watched it all unfold from my apartment in Seattle. I brewed tea in the mornings and opened Zara's reports like they were the front page of my own newspaper. I didn't enjoy it. But I didn't look away either. Then came the rent adjustment. Zara had reviewed the entire complex's leases. Out of 12 units, 8 were below market value. 6 by more than $200. Tyler and Jess were among them. I approved a rent increase, $175. Still below the market average. Still generous compared to the surrounding units. The notification letters went out. Standard formatting. No flourish. Effective November 1st, your rent will increase to $1,325 per month due to updated property taxes and building renovations. The fallout was immediate. Tyler's email arrived 3 hours later. Caps lock. Double exclamation points. The grammar of someone who's never been told no and doesn't know how to spell it. This is illegal. You can't raise our rent like this. Who even owns this place now? I read it over toast and apricot jam. Replied with Zara's template. Dear tenant, thank you for your inquiry. As per Washington state law, rent increases are legal with 30 days notice and are not subject to tenant approval. Property ownership has changed. All legal documentation is available upon request. Management, NL Holdings. 3 days later, he showed up at the property office in person. Zara called me after he left. He was loud, she said. Tried to demand answers. Called me a puppet. Said he'd get to the bottom of who's behind this. I asked how she responded. I said, sir, if you're struggling with the increase, perhaps it's time to downsize. Then I offered to show him listings from lower rent buildings nearby. I smiled into the phone. Good, I said. Keep everything professional. Document it all. Just didn't write. Didn't call. Not then. But I felt her, somewhere in the static, pacing, staring at bills, wondering when the walls would stop closing in. Then the calls started. Blocked numbers. Private lines. Hang-ups when I answered. Voicemails with no voice. Just breathing. And then, one night, a knock at my apartment door. Jess. Not crying. Not dramatic. Just hollow. Her coat was soaked. Her eyes rimmed with red. Her fingers trembled as she clutched a plastic bag like it contained her dignity. I let her in. She stood just inside the doorway, dripping onto my rug. I don't know where else to go, she said. I nodded once. Stepped aside. She sat at the table while I brewed tea. Tyler's unraveling, she said softly. He's paranoid. He thinks someone's trying to ruin us. Checks my phone every night. Follows me to work. I sat across from her, hands wrapped around my mug. You didn't tell him? She shook her head. He thinks it's some corporate company. Says we're being targeted. He's writing letters. Sending threats. Fake legal notices. I told him to stop, but her voice broke. He blames me. Silence. Then, quieter. He said it's my fault. That I brought you in. That I let you in. I looked her in the eye. You didn't let me in, Jess. You let him push me out. She swallowed. I know. Every time he rolled his eyes. Every time he called me a burden. Every time he spoke to me like I was a dog curled up in the corner, and you said nothing. That was a choice. She didn't argue. She just sat there, tears slipping down her cheeks, wordless. I loved you, I said. You were my daughter long before you were his wife. She covered her face with her hands. I thought, she choked. I thought he'd change. That if I just waited. He didn't. No. And now? She looked at me, eyes wide and broken. I don't know who I am anymore. I reached across the table and slid a tissue toward her. Then it's time to find out. A week later, Zara scheduled a tenant meeting. Standard procedure. Walk-through updates. Renovation timelines. Open Q&A. I told her I'd attend. Quietly. Just to observe. She reserved a small community room on the ground floor. Fold-out chairs. Coffee in a plastic urn. A clipboard with a sign-in sheet. I arrived 10 minutes early. Dressed simply gray blazer, hair down, clean shoes. Nothing flashy. Tenants trickled in. Some nodded politely. Others looked curious. I kept to the back. Then they arrived. Jess and Tyler. He swaggered in, loud, already irritated. Jess followed, eyes low, shoulders hunched. Zara welcomed everyone. Ran through updates. Leak repairs. Stairwell replacements. New laundry contracts. Then she cleared her throat. Before we finish, she said, I want to introduce the owner. She's here with us today. Tyler turned. Owner? I stepped forward. Calm. Straight posture. No smile. Good evening, I said. I'm Nora, owner of NL Holdings. The room stilled. Tyler's mouth fell open. Jess froze. You, he barked. This is a joke. No, I said. This is business. I opened a folder. Spoke clearly. These are the upgrades completed in the last 90 days. These are the tax records. These are the lease violations. These are the new contracts. Everything above board. Everything filed. He sputtered. This is harassment. You're targeting us. No, I said again. I'm enforcing the same rules on everyone. The only difference is that I haven't forgotten. The room shifted. Tenants looked between us, recognizing something deeper beneath the surface. Tyler stepped forward. You've made an enemy, he said. I met his gaze. You made one the day you sold my car without asking and called me a burden in front of strangers. Jess stepped between us. Stop, she said sharply. Her voice, for the first time, had steel. She turned to me. Why didn't you tell me? I didn't blink. Because you wouldn't have believed me. Not until you saw him like this. Her eyes welled. She nodded. And for the first time in years, she didn't look away. The next morning, I found a yellow envelope in my mailbox. No return address. Inside, a torn page from a diary. My mother's diary. I recognized the paper, the ink, the fold, and scrawled at the bottom, in Tyler's unmistakable handwriting. This is all you'll ever be. A footnote. I stared at the words. Then I burned them. Not in rage. Not in fear. In ceremony. Because that's what happens to footnotes when the story gets rewritten. When the manager emailed the latest batch of photos from Unit 5, I opened them like an autopsy. The mold had spread in the bathroom. Black tendrils along the tile grout. Under the sink, warped wood bloomed with water damage. The ceiling had yellowed in a jagged crescent. Someone had peeled away a square of wallpaper like a scab. In the corner of one photo, beside the baseboard, I saw it, a roach trap filled with wings and limbs, half hidden behind a tipped-over shampoo bottle. This was not a home. It was a grave for illusions. Zara had labeled each file. Evidence. Unit 5, 11/03. Noise violation audio clip, 11/01. Lease violation. Property neglect, Unit 5. I clicked the audio. Tyler's voice came first, a low snarl barely muffled by drywall. This is all your fault. A pause. Something crashed. You said she was gone for good. You said she was broken. Then Jess, stop yelling. Please. Then silence. Then another crash. I turned it off. My tea had gone cold. I closed my laptop. Sat there staring at nothing. I had never wanted to become the villain in their marriage. But I was beginning to understand I didn't have to. Tyler was rotting from the inside, and Jess had built her life on that decay. All I had done was shine a light. 2 days later, Zara sent another message. Subject: disturbing note. Found under office door. The attached photo was a scan. An envelope. No return address. Inside, a note, all caps, letters angry and carved too deep. I know what you're doing. I'll find you. I didn't need a handwriting expert. It was Tyler. He always pressed too hard on the pen. As if he were trying to punch his words into the page. As if the world might finally understand him if only the letters bled enough. I emailed Kaplan. He called within an hour. This crosses the line, he said. We escalate. We document. We protect you. I'm not afraid, I told him. I am, he replied quietly. But not for your safety. For what you might be forced to do next. That night, I couldn't sleep. Not because I was scared. I wasn't. But because something colder had taken root in me, a clarity I hadn't expected. Tyler wasn't trying to intimidate me. He was trying to undo me. He couldn't handle that I had risen. That I had shed the role of burden. That I no longer fed his need to feel superior. Power doesn't like silence. It wants reaction. I refused to give him one. Instead, I watched. 3 weeks after the rent increase, Unit 5 still hadn't paid. Jess sent a message, short, hesitant. I'm trying to work extra shifts. We'll pay what we can. Please don't evict us. She didn't use my name. Not Mom. Not even Nora. Just a blank address to the owner of her consequences. I didn't reply. But I didn't file the eviction either. Let them sit in the mess they made. Let them feel the pressure in the walls. Let the roaches whisper. Then came the rain. It was a Monday. I remember because I'd just come back from my volunteer shift at the shelter. I'd spent the afternoon sorting donations, coats, toiletries, blankets, and one woman hugged me when I handed her a scarf. She said, "You have kind eyes." It nearly undid me. So when the knock came that evening, I wasn't prepared. I opened the door. Jess stood there, soaked, hair plastered to her cheeks. No umbrella. No jacket. Just a plastic grocery bag clutched to her chest. She looked like someone who had finally stopped pretending the flood wasn't rising. I shouldn't be here, she said. You are, I replied. I stepped aside. She walked in slowly, as if entering a museum of her past. Her eyes scanned the space. The hardwood floors. The lamp I bought from the thrift store. The photo of Harold on the hallway wall. She stopped and stared at it. He never liked Tyler, she whispered. I didn't reply. I handed her a towel. She sat at the kitchen table. I made tea. She placed the grocery bag on the counter, soup cans, crackers, and a box of lemon ginger tea. Offerings, she said. Like a cat bringing dead mice. I allowed myself the smallest smile. She wrapped the towel around her shoulders. Looked smaller than I remembered. Then she said it. I left him. 3 words. So simple. So seismic. I didn't speak. Let her continue. He went through my phone again. Found a message I sent Zara about rent. Accused me of plotting with you. Said I was disloyal. I told him to stop. He threw the phone at the wall. Said I wasn't worth saving. Her hands shook. I told him I was done. I packed one bag. He called me weak. Told me I was just like you. That I belonged in a motel. I sipped my tea. Let the words settle like sediment. He's not wrong, I said. Jess blinked. What? I did belong in a motel. For a while. I earned that exile. Because I refused to see what was in front of me. Tears welled in her eyes. I'm sorry, she whispered. I let him. I didn't protect you. No, I corrected. You didn't see me. That's worse. She nodded. Didn't argue. We sat in silence. 2 women finally stripped of their excuses. You raised me better than this, she said. I did. I stopped looking. I met her eyes. Then look again. The next day, Tyler sent an email. Threats. Legal jargon. Claims of discrimination. Promises to expose NL Holdings for targeted harassment. Demands for immediate forgiveness of rent and cancellation of all lease increases. He CC'd a fake law firm email address. It bounced. I forwarded it to Kaplan. He called within minutes. My team's ready. Want to send the letter? Do it. The cease and desist went out that afternoon. It included timestamps, lease violations, the threat letter, complaints from neighbors, vandalism reports, IP addresses linking him to messages sent anonymously to the property manager. 3 hours later, Tyler replied, "You've ruined my life." I read it while washing dishes. Then I replied, "No, you did that yourself." A week later, Zara conducted final inspections. Unit 5 was nearly empty. A neighbor said Tyler had packed his things into a friend's truck at 2 a.m. No forwarding address. No apology. Just gone. Jess stayed in Everett. Rented a studio. No furniture. No TV. Just space. She began therapy. Took a painting class. Texted me photos of her work, abstracts of fire, shadow, ash. One showed a phoenix, red and gold, rising from smoke. She brought it to me in a cardboard tube. I framed it. Hung it above my fireplace. Every morning, I looked at it before I made tea. That winter, I drove past the Everett complex for the last time. The new paint gleamed. Lights worked. Units were full. The parking lot was quiet. I parked. Stepped out. Zara met me with the final paperwork. The renovation phase is complete. No violations. All leases current. She handed me a manila envelope. Your building now meets all state standards. I nodded. I don't want to be a landlord forever. I figured, she said. We stood in the cold for a moment. Then she asked, do you regret any of it? I thought of Jess's silence. Tyler's threats. My own erasure. No, I said. Then added, but I'm tired. She understood. I shook her hand. Drove home. That night, I lit a candle. Made soup. Sat in the glow of the painting. I opened the last message I would ever send to Jess that had no ask, no subtext, no silence curled beneath it. I'm proud of you. Not because you left him. Because you found yourself. That's harder. She replied. You didn't raise me to be soft. I just forgot. I wrote back. Then remember. Power is quiet when it's real. That's something men like Tyler never understand. They think power is noise, fists on tables, words in all caps, control disguised as protection. But real power doesn't raise its voice. It doesn't have to. It just stands up. That's what I did the day I walked into the tenant meeting, stood up. Zara had scheduled it for a Thursday evening. Nothing formal. Just a gathering in the community room of the Everett building, the same room where they once hosted barbecues and 4th of July potlucks. Now it smelled like floor polish and uneaten cookies. We arranged chairs in a half circle. I wore gray. Blazer. Slacks. Modest earrings. Hair brushed back. No perfume. No rings. I didn't want them to remember me as the woman Tyler mocked, or the shadow Jess once let shrink. I wanted them to see the owner. Tyler was already there when I arrived. Arms crossed. Legs spread wide like a man trying to own the air around him. His jaw was tight. His eyes locked on Zara like he was daring her to blink. Jess sat 2 chairs away. She looked smaller now, not diminished, just deflated. Her face was bare. No makeup. No mask. She hadn't seen me walk in yet. Zara cleared her throat. Let's get started. She opened with updates, plumbing, safety lighting, pest control. She mentioned the new trash pickup schedule, the refinished stair railings, the parking violations that would now be enforced. Then she said it. Calmly. Cleanly. And finally, I'd like to introduce someone. She's here tonight. All heads turned. The owner of NL Holdings. I stood. The room froze. Tyler's face contorted first, confusion curdling into rage. Jess turned slowly, eyes wide. Her mouth opened, but no sound came. Good evening, I said. My name is Nora. Someone whispered, wait, you. Yes, I continued. I'm the sole owner of this property. The silence felt like held breath. I purchased the building several months ago through a tax default auction. I chose to remain anonymous until renovations were complete. That phase is now over. Tyler shot to his feet. His voice cracked. This is a setup. You lied. This is harassment. You did all this to get back at me. No, I replied, calm as water. I did this to reclaim what you thought you had the right to break. He laughed, ugly and hollow. You kicked us out of your house and now you buy ours? That's psychotic. I held his gaze. You didn't get kicked out. You got consequences. You opened the door, Tyler. I just walked through it. He looked to Jess for backup. She didn't move. I turned back to the room. I've read every complaint, every maintenance request. I've walked these halls, listened to your concerns, watched this building wake up again. This isn't about revenge. This is about dignity. For everyone. One of the older tenants, a woman named Ramona who'd lived there since 1998, spoke next. You fixed the heating, she said. First time in 6 years. That matters. A man in his 30s nodded. The hallway doesn't stink like mold anymore. And the lights work. Someone chuckled. Then Tyler erupted. She doesn't belong here. She's not a landlord, she's a damn retiree with a grudge. Jess stood. And for the first time since I'd reclaimed my voice, she used hers. Stop, she said. He spun to her. You two? You're on her side now. I'm not on sides, she replied. I'm on truth. And the truth is, she owns the building. And you ruined what could have been a life. Tyler stared at her like she was a stranger. Maybe she was. Maybe grief and pride and bad choices had finally unpeeled her back to who she used to be before him. He turned to me, voice low, threatening. This isn't over. No, I said. It's not. But I'm no longer the one being erased. He stormed out. The door slammed. The silence after sounded like peace. After the meeting, Jess stayed behind. She walked slowly toward me, the echo of her steps magnified in the now empty room. I didn't know you had it in you, she said. I didn't either, I replied. We sat. She took a breath. I read the diary, she whispered. The one you kept from Grandma. My chest tightened. I didn't mean to. I was cleaning out the box you left behind. I found it. The pages about W, P, H. The notes. The inheritance. I nodded. I understand now, she said. Why you never told me. Why you waited. Because if I'd told you back then, I said, you would have brought it straight to him. She didn't deny it. He made everything feel like a debt, she whispered. Like love had to be earned with silence. That's what people like him do. They confuse compliance with care. She looked at me, eyes filled with a kind of grief that had no name. I left him. I nodded. I know. I thought leaving would break me. Did it? No, she said. It saved me. The next morning, Kaplan called. Tyler's been busy, he said. Go on. 3 fake legal claims filed. All rejected. 1 online smear campaign, also removed. But now he's trying something else. Which is? He's threatening to go public. Claims you falsified the auction documents. That you used your inside position as a family member to manipulate the system. I laughed. I was in a motel the day the auction was announced. I was nobody to him then. I know, Kaplan said. But truth doesn't matter to people drowning in ego. What do? We show them the lifeboat they already burned. An hour later, I received the draft of a formal cease and desist. Tyler was served the next day. 2 days later, Jess called. He's gone, she said. Packed a bag. Said he was going somewhere that still respects him. Left the keys. Didn't say goodbye. I didn't ask where he went. I didn't care. She started crying. I keep thinking about what he said. What? That you ruined his life. I paused. Jess, I said. He did that himself. He just hoped you wouldn't notice. She exhaled. For the first time in a long time, she laughed soft, broken, but real. I guess I finally stopped pretending. The following week, a package arrived at my door. Inside, a canvas wrapped in craft paper. No note. I peeled it open. It was a painting. A phoenix rising from ash, wings stained with fire, background dark but glowing, as if dawn was waiting just off frame. The bottom corner was signed, J.H. I hung it above the fireplace. Not as a symbol of revenge. As a reminder of survival. That's the thing about rising. You don't do it once. You do it every day. For days after Tyler vanished, Jess showed up at my door with something in her hands that stopped me cold. My mother's diary. The real one, not a copied page, not a burned fragment, but the full, weighty, leather-bound original I had once locked away like a secret too sacred for daylight. She held it carefully, like an apology. "You left this last time," she said. I let her in. She placed it on the kitchen table. I stared at it, then at her. "You read it," I said. Not a question. She nodded. Twice. We sat, the silence between us thick but not heavy. Some silences are traps. Others are transitions. This was the latter. "I know who he was," she said. W.P.H. I didn't answer. I looked him up. Hart Marine. The founder. He died in 2007. But the records, the trusts, they still link to NL Holdings. I folded my hands. Waited. "Why didn't you ever tell me that he was your father?" I looked at her. Long and hard. "Because you didn't know how to love me when I had nothing," I said. "You only started looking again when I had something to offer." Jess flinched. "That's not fair." "No," I said. "It's exact." She opened her mouth to defend herself. Closed it again. Then she whispered, "I didn't know how to protect you without making Tyler angry." "You didn't need to protect me. You needed to see me. That's what you stopped doing." She looked down at the table. Her fingers brushed the edge of the diary. "I remember when you used to write," she said. "Short stories. Little poems. You kept them in a folder under your bed. You used to read them to me." I felt something shift in my chest. A drawer I hadn't opened in years. "You stopped," she continued. "After Dad died. You stopped writing. You stopped laughing. You stopped asking for anything." I thought asking was dangerous. She looked up. "Why?" "Because the more invisible I became, the safer I felt. Until you married someone who taught you how to look through me completely." Tears welled in her eyes. "I wish I could go back," she whispered. "I don't," I said. She blinked. "Because if you could go back, you'd try to soften the story. Rewrite it. Edit your guilt into sympathy. But now," I tapped the diary. "Now you've read the truth. And you have to sit with it." Jess didn't cry. Not like she used to, not the performative tears of someone hoping to be forgiven before the wound fully bleeds. These were quieter. Earned. "Do you hate me?" she asked. I thought about that for a long time. Then shook my head. "No. I grieve you." "That's different." She came back 2 days later, this time without knocking. I was rearranging my books. It had become a ritual, touching spines, flipping pages, trying to remember the woman who once lost herself inside stories. Jess stepped in. She looked different. Centered. Not healed, but healing. "I signed the lease," she said. "New place. Just mine." "Where?" "Not far. 2 bus rides. 1 walk. Tiny kitchen. But it feels light." "Good," I said. Light is underrated. She handed me a small envelope. "What's this?" She shrugged. "A gift." Inside was a keychain, a gold charm in the shape of a typewriter. "For the stories you stopped telling," she said. I didn't thank her. Not yet. Not because I wasn't grateful, but because thank yous mean more when they arrive from clean ground. "I'm starting therapy," she added. A real one this time. No self-help books. No Instagram quotes. "Do you know what you want from it?" She paused. "To understand why I mistook submission for love. And why I stayed small for so long." I nodded. "That's a good start." The next morning, Kaplan called. "Tyler's resurfaced." I rubbed my temple. "Where?" "Online. He's been making noise. Implying you used coercion to acquire the building. That you manipulated the legal system. He's throwing around words like fraud and elder abuse." I let out a long breath. "He doesn't have proof," I said. "He doesn't need proof," Kaplan replied. "He needs attention. And you're still a woman he can't control." What do? We preempt him. Within hours, Kaplan's office issued a formal statement to media outlets. NL Holdings, owned by MS. Nora Harrington acquired the Everett property through a publicly documented auction following state guidelines. All renovations and lease actions were performed within state and local ordinances. Attempts to mischaracterize this process as personal retaliation are defamatory and will be met with legal response. The post ran for 1 hour. Tyler deleted his within 10 minutes. Later that day, a letter arrived at my apartment. Typed. Anonymous. But I recognized the tone. You may think you've won, but you've made enemies. The world doesn't forgive old women who play dirty. I read it. Folded it once. Placed it in a folder labeled noise. Then I poured tea. A week later, I got a knock I didn't expect. Sarah. I opened the door to find her in jeans and a windbreaker, holding a manila envelope. Figured you'd want this in person. What is it? She handed it to me. Final lease ledger. Closing projections. Property valuation post-renovation. I scanned the top sheet. Numbers that once felt like magic now felt like math. So? I asked. She smiled. Your property's doubled in value. If you sell now, you walk away clean. Quiet. Wealthy. I felt a stillness move through me. List it, I said. She blinked. You sure? I've already kept what I needed. The sale closed on a Tuesday. No champagne. No fanfare. Just a pen, a signature, and an exhale that felt 3 years overdue. The wire hit my account before sunset. Half went straight to a shelter for women, survivors of coercive control and domestic silencing. I requested that the new wing be named after my mother. The Mabel House. The other half? That bought a new home. A small place. Modest. In Spokane. With oak trees and a porch swing. A yard big enough for a tomato garden. No HOA. No echoes. Just peace. Just helped me move. We carried boxes in silence. Made grilled cheese the first night and burned one side. We laughed, not the forced laughter of people trying to forget, but the kind that happens when you finally stop pretending you were never broken. That night, we sat on the porch swing as the sun dipped behind the trees. You didn't raise me to be weak, she said. No, I said. You weakened yourself to make a man feel strong. She nodded. Never again. We didn't mention Tyler. His name was like dust swept out, never returned. Instead, I looked at her and said, Do you know what strength really is? She shook her head. Forgiveness, I said. But not for him. For yourself. She leaned into my shoulder. We sat there until the stars came. Later, in the quiet of my new bedroom, I opened my mother's diary again. I traced her words. The pain. The promises. The warnings she left between the lines. Then I pulled a sheet of paper from my drawer and slipped it inside the cover. A note for Jess. You don't need their love to be worthy. You just need the truth and to remember who you are. You are not what he said. You are not what you allowed. You are the woman who walked away. That's enough. Love, Mom. I closed the diary. Set it on the shelf. Lit a candle. And whispered aloud, not to Jess, not to Harold, not to anyone but myself. I forgive you. It didn't end with the sale. It never does. People like Tyler don't vanish quietly. They dissolve in stages, clinging to scraps of power like wet leaves on a windshield. Even after he left, even after the apartment emptied and the locks were changed, his residue remained in emails, in whispers, in the stinging aftertaste of every room he once polluted. 3 days after I closed the sale, I received a notification from a social media platform I hadn't used in years. Tag alert, Nora Harrington. Curious, I clicked. Tyler had started a thread, vague, venomous. Sometimes the real villains hide behind the mask of family. Ask yourself, would you let your mother evict you in winter? Or does greed have a new face now? He didn't name me directly. He didn't need to. The implication hung there like sour perfume. Comments followed. Some sympathetic strangers. Some bots. One cousin I hadn't spoken to in 12 years posted a sad face emoji and praying for peace. I didn't reply. I didn't need to. Kaplan did. His second letter to Tyler's burner email was short, surgical. Cease all digital defamation immediately or we proceed with formal litigation. Your posts have been documented. This is your final warning. The thread was gone in under an hour. I imagined him staring at the screen, red-faced, fists clenched, wondering how I had become someone untouchable. Because that's what he feared, not loss, but my liberation. Jess came by a few days later with takeout, lentil soup, naan, and a box of mango lassi. She'd cut her hair. Short now, curling just under her ears. It framed her differently. Sharper. Stronger. You look like Grandma, I said. She smiled. I take that as a compliment now. We ate on the porch. Jess had started painting again. She showed me photos, a series called Undoing. They weren't literal. No flames. No men. Just motion, thick brushstrokes, spiraling shapes, layers scraped back to reveal something softer beneath. They're not angry, she said. They're aware. I nodded. That's more dangerous. After dinner, she opened a folded sheet of paper. What's this? I asked. A class I'm taking. Community college. Art therapy certification. I want to help women who've been through, men like him. I held the paper for a moment longer than I meant to. I'm proud of you, I said. She exhaled like she'd been holding her breath for a year. Do you ever think about him? She asked. Sometimes, I admitted. But not who he was. Who I let myself become around him. She nodded. I still hear his voice sometimes. That'll pass. You just have to replace it with your own. I spent the winter finishing small things I had left undone for decades. I painted the baseboards. Labeled all my spice jars. Replaced the cracked drawer in the bathroom. Things no one else would notice, but I would. I bought a chair for the porch. Wide and soft. Painted sea glass green. I sat in it every morning with my tea and watched the sun stretch its arms across the grass. No one raised their voice. No one asked for anything. I learned the difference between peace and quiet. Quiet is something others give you. Peace is something you claim. In March, Kaplan called with final confirmation. All the titles are clear. No pending claims. No legal shadows. And the last of the lawsuit? Settled. Confidentially. He signed the NDA last week. Good, I said. He asked if he could send you a letter. No. He said he wanted closure. He had that chance. He closed the door with his own hands. Kaplan didn't argue. Before he hung up, he said something I didn't expect. You're not just a client to me, Nora. You're a reminder. Of what? That silence isn't the same as consent. I let the word settle. Thank you, Aaron. One day in early spring, I stood in my garden, real dirt under my fingernails, the scent of new life in the air, and remembered a dream I had long ago. Not one of riches. Not even of escape. Just a simple vision. A home where I wasn't tolerated. Where I wasn't ignored. Where no one walked into the room and looked right through me. I had that now. The tomatoes were blooming. The wind carried no voices. It felt like freedom. I took a train to Yakima one last time. Not to visit anyone. Just to say goodbye. I passed the old street. The house I once called mine was freshly painted. A young couple pushed a stroller along the sidewalk. I didn't linger. Instead, I went to the cemetery. Harold's grave. I sat beside it, the grass cool beneath me, and placed my hand against the stone. I did it, I whispered. I told him everything. The diary. The sale. The building. Tyler's threats. Jess's awakening. I didn't cry. Grief had already taught me its language. I didn't need translation. When I stood to leave, I placed a small stone on top of the marker. A Jewish tradition I learned from Mabel's diary. Something permanent. Small. Heavy enough to matter. I returned home to a letter from the shelter. The Mabel house was complete. They invited me to the opening. Said they'd framed a copy of the donation letter in the entrance hallway. When I arrived, the building smelled of new paint and cinnamon rolls. A woman named Carla met me at the door. She said, there are women here who needed to see your name. I walked the halls. Listened to their stories. One said, he never hit me. Just wore me down. Another said, he made me feel like asking for help was betrayal. Another, I used to feel powerful. Then I forgot how. I saw pieces of myself in every one of them. Before I left, I stood under the plaque. The Mabel House, in honor of Mabel Lee and every woman who refused to stay silent. I touched the brass. Closed my eyes. Said thank you. Not to the building. To myself. Back in Spokane, Jess surprised me with a painting. Small. Framed in wood. A woman, faceless, standing in a storm. Not running from it, standing inside it. Her coat whipped in the wind. Her feet planted. Above her, lightning. Beneath her, fire. Behind her, nothing. She said, "It's called inheritance." I cried when she left. Not out of sadness. Out of recognition. Sometimes, late at night, I still think about Tyler. Not as a villain. As a mirror. He showed me what I had allowed. What I had surrendered to avoid conflict. What I had traded in exchange for approval that never came. Now, there is no one left to approve me. And I've never felt more whole. This is the story of how they tried to erase me. How they made me feel like a ghost. But ghosts don't bleed. And I did. I bled. I broke. I rebuilt. And now? Now I live. There's a silence that comes after war. Not the hollow kind that follows grief, nor the taut quiet of waiting, but the deep, final stillness of survival. It doesn't hum. It doesn't ache. It just is. Like a lake at dawn. Like breath in the lungs of someone who no longer needs permission to exist. That's what I felt after the last loose thread was tied. Not vindication. Not euphoria. Certainty. I had done everything I could. And now it was done. Kaplan sent the final file mid-May, notarized, sealed, stamped in blue ink. It listed me as the sole beneficiary of every account, every asset. The building was sold, the taxes paid, the trust dissolved. Tyler had disappeared into another city, silenced by his own NDA and a legal threat he didn't dare test. Jess had her lease, her job, her therapist, her art. And I had myself. So I used what was left. Half of the sale, the clean, hard-earned half, went to fund the Mabel house, already thriving with 6 full-time staff and 3 new beds for emergency intakes. The other half bought my last house. Small. Modest. Not loud. But real. Just outside Spokane. Near enough to city life, far enough to breathe. A 2-bedroom craftsman with weathered shutters and a porch that creaked like old friends telling secrets. It came with a swing. A tool shed. An apricot tree in the yard that didn't bear much fruit, but tried like hell every spring. I named the house in my mind, Sanctuary. Not because it was sacred, but because it was mine. Jess helped me move in late June. We didn't make a scene of it. No declarations. No ceremonies. Just 2 women unloading a rented van, passing boxes, sharing sweat, and speaking only when needed. She brought over her old easel and set it up on the back porch. "I want to paint you here," she said. "Not sitting. Standing. You look stronger when you're upright." I laughed. "I am stronger when I'm upright." We ate grilled cheese on the floor the first night. Burned one side. Laughed like children. She stayed late, barefoot, sipping ginger ale from a chipped mason jar. "I'm learning to be alone," she said. I nodded. Good. Still feels weird. It will. Until it doesn't. She looked around the room, the old lamp, the bookcase, the faint scent of lemon oil from my wiped-down counters. Then she said it, carefully. "You don't talk about him anymore." I didn't answer right away. Then, "He doesn't deserve airtime." "Do you miss who he used to be?" "No," I said. "I miss who I thought he was." Jess set down her jar. "I thought I'd marry someone like Dad," she said. "Instead, I married someone who made me forget I even had one." We didn't speak after that. There was nothing else to say. She left just before midnight. Kissed my forehead at the door. "You didn't raise me to be soft," she said. "No," I replied. "I raised you to be a woman who could hold fire without burning. You just forgot." She smiled, eyes glassy. "Then look again." I live differently now. I wake when I want. Sometimes 6 a.m., sometimes 9. I no longer measure my days by who needs me. I plant tomatoes in raised beds behind the shed. They're crooked. Imperfect. Glorious. The first time I harvested 3 fat ones, I laughed until I cried. Not for the fruit. For the miracle of uninterrupted growth. The house stays quiet. No footsteps that hesitate outside a door. No slammed cabinets. No muttered insults camouflaged as sighs. Just wind. Birds. The occasional delivery truck. Sometimes I sit on the swing and reread my mother's diary. Other times I write in one of my own. Stories. Fragments. Truths too sharp to say aloud. One night I wrote, "You can't erase a woman who remembers everything." Occasionally I get letters. from women I've never met. One came with a dried lavender sprig and a note. You told my story before I had the courage to live it. Thank you. Another came with no name at all. Just, he left. I stayed. You helped. I keep them in a box under my bed. Not for vanity. For proof. That truth told in full voice doesn't just set you free, it sets others on fire. The last time I saw Tyler was in a courthouse hallway. Not for me. For someone else. I'd been summoned for jury duty. He didn't recognize me at first. He walked past. Older. Gaunter. Wearing a suit that didn't quite fit. He laughed at something the bailiff said, then caught sight of me. He froze. I didn't blink. His eyes darted. Calculated. As if deciding whether to speak. Apologize. Confront. I raised a single brow. He turned and walked away. That was the real closure. Not the silence. But the knowing that I had no fear left to feed him. I saw Jess again in August. She brought over a watercolor, shades of gray and blue, with one violent streak of red running down the center. I called it inheritance, she said. I like it. She nodded. Do you ever think about what he expected to inherit? Control, I said. Entitlement. He never thought he'd need to earn the rest. She hung the painting in my hallway, right beneath the shelf with Harold's photo. Afterward, she helped me make soup. We didn't burn the bread this time. Progress. That night, after she left, I stood at the kitchen window. The tea kettle whistled. The wind shifted the apricot leaves. I whispered aloud, not to anyone, not for anyone, but for myself. I forgive you. Not to Tyler. Not even to Jess. To me. For the years I stayed silent. For the days I begged to be seen. For the ache I buried in corners and closets and casseroles. Forgiveness isn't softness. It's sovereignty. Before bed, I opened the diary one last time. Slipped in a note for Jess. You don't need their love to be worthy. You don't need their approval to breathe. All you need is the truth and the reminder that no one owns you but you. Ever again. Love, Mom. Then I turned out the light. In the end, I was not the fire they tried to smother. I was the spark they underestimated. And now? Now I am home.